What's up, Rebels, and welcome to the first episode of Things You Didn't Know, Dukes of Hazzard edition. Today we're going to be talking about the General Lees used on the Dukes of Hazzard. That's right, General Lees. There was way more than just one General Lee used on the show. In fact, they actually used somewhere between 256 and 321 General Lee cars throughout the filming of the entire Dukes of Hazzard 7 seasons. I'll be discussing all of this and much more on the first episode of Things You Didn't Know, Dukes of Hazzard edition. I'm your host, Chunky Monkey 40, creator of the GTA 5 Dukes of Hazzard tribute series. Well, I guess that's what I'm most known for. I've done a lot of Dukes of Hazzard videos on my channel, but this one in particular, we're going to be diving into the history of the General Lee. But first, be sure to go and check out chunkymonkey40.com/shop to get yourself some Orange Cars Matter swag. We've got shirts. These are the newest addition to the store. We've also got posters, stickers, and koozies. So definitely be sure to go check it out if you're interested. The General Lee is obviously the car from the 1980s hit TV show Dukes of Hazzard. It was driven by Bo Duke and navigated by his cousin Luke Duke. As the story goes in the first episode of Season 7, Happy Birthday General Lee, the General Lee came about when the Dukes needed a race car for an engine they had just built. So they went to Boss Hogg to get a loan so that they could get themselves a car. They found a busted up black 1969 Dodge Charger at a junkyard in Capital City. They painted it orange because it was the only color their local mechanic Cooter had, slapped an 01 on the side with a rebel flag on the roof, and out came the General Lee. But that was just in the TV show. In reality, we don't really know who designed the General Lee. Although famous movie car creator George Barris has taken credit in the past for designing the car, that is in fact not at all true. The only General Lees that George Barris ever had a part of building was two inaccurate General Lee replicas that were used by Catherine Bach to take pictures and sign autographs with. So no, George Barris did not design the General Lee. It is unknown who exactly designed the General Lee, but it was probably a mix between the creators of the show, Guy Waldron and Don McDougal, and probably some of the mechanics at Warner Bros. Who physically built the first several General Lee cars used. The producers at first actually wanted to use the Chevrolet Chevelle for the General Lee, but they couldn't keep that car in the budget, so they ran with the 1969 Dodge Charger. According to the script for the pilot episode of the Dukes of Hazzard, One-Armed Bandits, the General Lee was actually supposed to have a Confederate gray paint job rather than orange. The reason they changed the color is simply because the gray didn't look as good on film as a bright color like orange would. And plus, gray just didn't really look right for the car. Hello from the editing stage of this video. Right here in the video, I forgot to include that when they changed the color from Confederate gray to orange, they didn't pick a specific color orange to go with. It wasn't Corvette Flame Red or any of these other colors that you hear people say the General Lee is. It's not. You gotta remember, they were making these cars quickly. All they were doing is just mixing paint, making a color orange that looked similar to what they had had before, and then just spraying it onto the car. It was gonna get destroyed in a shot anyway, so it didn't really matter. As long as it looked right, it was good. There is no proof that there is an actual color of the General Lee. There is no proof that Corvette Flame Red is the color of the General Lee, because there is no color of the General Lee. It's just straight up orange.
They mixed up a color and painted a 69 Dodge Charger orange. Wasn't Corvette red, it wasn't Hugger orange, it wasn't Hemi orange, it was orange.
When they first started getting ready to get the show made, the 01 was added onto the door sometime after they made the car orange, simply because the General Lee was designed to be a race car, and every race car needs a number. If you look at the first several promo pictures for the Dukes of Hazzard, you'll notice that the 01 is not on the door, and the door is actually opened as well. The doors not being welded shut and there not being a number on the side of the car leads me to believe that the General Lee wasn't intended to be a race car at first, but just a moonshine running car. That idea I feel like is pretty accurate because 1, the Dukes of Hazzard was based off of a movie called Moonrunners, and 2, the Dukes are obviously ex-moonshine runners. So I feel like when they decided to make the General Lee a race car, that was more so when they started to weld the doors shut and put the 01s on the side. Another interesting fact about the design of the General Lee is that the interior was always tan. It was never not tan. Warner Bros. Never once used any different color of interior for the General Lee besides tan. Now the reason they used tan is because it looks so much better on film. And that's also why Roscoe's car and Daisy's Jeep also have tan interiors. So if you see a General Lee replica with a black interior, or any colored interior that isn't tan, it is not a show-accurate car. That is actually one of the biggest mistakes made when people build General Lees, is that they don't change the color of the interior. And I mean, I could see that because black does look cool, don't get me wrong, but tan is the color of the General Lee's interior. Waylon Jennings is General Lee. The interior on that General Lee is black, obviously because Waylon Jennings likes black. It's all on personal preference, but if you're going for a show-accurate car, tan needs to be the color. Something else that's commonly messed up on General Lee replicas is actually this back panel right here, where the taillights are. That absolutely needs to be black. It was never not black on the show. Muscle cars from this period were, according to several sources, built with a flat black rear panel to simulate the exhaust of a rocket. It was always black on the Dukes of Hazzard, except in one scene in the 1997 Dukes of Hazzard reunion movie. It was actually orange in the scene where they loaded the fake moonshine into the trunk of the General Lee to race against 00. That happened because they were looking at toy General Lees to build the car, rather than pictures from the actual show. When shooting that scene, John Schneider and Tom Wopat caught the mistake on the car and quickly notified the producers so that they could fix it for the rest of the movie. A very common question I get regards the origin of the General Lee's signature Dixie horn. Where did that come from? Well, when they filmed the season 1 episode High Octane down in Georgia, someone actually drove by the set of The Boar's Nest in an El Camino and blew their Dixie horn. When the guy drove by, executive producer Paul Picard jumped in a van and chased him down. They caught up to the guy and bought the horn on the spot, put it in the General Lee, and the rest is history. A common misconception about the General Lee is the engine. According to the show, the General Lee had a 426 Hemi under the hood. Now, that may have been true on screen, but in reality it wasn't. The actual General Lee stunt cars consisted of several different motors, actually. Those were 318s, 340s, 340 Magnums, and 440s. But never was there a car with a 426 Hemi in it. There also was never any stick shift cars used, only automatic. That stick shift you hear actually isn't even a Charger. According to John Schneider, who played Bo Duke, the engine sound effects they used on the Dukes of Hazzard were all taken from a sound effects company, and are also the same sound effects that were used on the 1968 Ford Mustang in the movie Bullitt. So you can't always believe what's in the script because movie magic, well, is exactly what it is, movie magic. Part of movie magic is being able to do stuff on the cheap end. In the first 5 episodes of Dukes, all the decals were actually painted onto the car by hand. You see, when Dukes of Hazzard first came out, it was only supposed to be a filler for the Incredible Hulk season break, and it was never intended to be anything more than that. So at first, they didn't have to mass produce these cars. However, all that changed when the show was picked up for more episodes. The Dukes had stopped filming in Covington, Georgia, and moved out to California. There, Warner Bros. Began using vinyl decals instead of hand-painted ones because it was less time-consuming and cheaper to get done. When they moved out to California, they also made a couple design changes to the General Lee. The biggest one they made was the removal of the checkered flag Confederate flag cross right above the back antenna and beneath the rear windshield. They removed that because the General Lee stunt cars needed to be quick and easy to make. They had to get these things busted out, ready to go so they could jump them and move on to the next one. Taking that off the back was a small change, but it made it just a little bit easier for them to make the cars. And the antenna on the back. Actually, so that was put on the back because when Tom Wopat did one of the first hood slides on the car, the one that's actually in the title shot, you could see it break off plain as day. He cut his arm open on the antenna and broke it right off.
Here's a little trivia. In the very beginning of this show, when we show the opening credits of Dukes, it's actually Tom, it's Luke, that does the great hood slide. I jump in the window, he slides across. We were just outside of Atlanta on Spring Street. Yeah. And he knocked this off with his forearm. And he still has a scar from here all the way down to here. He got in the car so fast, and then we took off. We stopped about 100 yards up, and I said, what the hell happened to you? He was bad. He had, I don't know, like 30, 40 stitches.
After that happened, they just put it on the trunk from then on so the Dukes could jump all over the hood and roof of the car with no injuries. Now, not to spoil your love for Bo's driving, but Bo actually never jumped the General Lee on the show. Driving, jumping, drifting, driving on two wheels, and flipping the cars was all done by the Dukes of Hazzard stunt team, which consisted of people such as Craig and Paul Baxley, Corey Eubanks, Jack Gill, Tom Sarmento, and many more. Almost every episode of the Dukes of Hazzard contained an average of 2 General Lee jumps per episode. To put that into perspective, there's 147 episodes across 7 seasons. That times 2 jumps an episode gives us about 294 jumps and destructions of the General Lee at a bare minimum. Even if we subtracted the miniatures used on the show, we would be at around 275 General Lees destroyed. That doesn't even include the cars that were destroyed in the driving scenes, sunk into lakes, or just never even used on screen. But like I said in the beginning of the video, we don't know how much General Lees were really destroyed during the run of the Dukes of Hazzard. The estimated amount of General Lees destroyed is between 256 and 321 cars. This is why screen-used General Lees are so rare. There are only about 17 real General Lees known to exist. Of these General Lees, 2 of them stand out a lot. The first one is obviously the first one, Lee 1. Lee 1 was rediscovered by Travis Bell at a small junkyard in Dawsonville, Georgia. The last time the car had been seen was in the Season 1 episode, Repo Man, where it was repainted to look like Richard Petty's race car. To Travis's luck, it was actually still like that when he found it. So he battled back and forth with the junkyard owner in an attempt to get him to sell, and eventually he managed to purchase the car for just $400. Could you imagine buying the first General Lee for only 400 bucks? After Travis got a hold of it, he had it for a little bit, and then he sold it to some guys in Ohio, still in its Richard Petty form. Then the guys from Ohio sold it to a guy in Florida, and then that guy owned it for a little bit longer until he traced down Travis Bell again, and he asked Travis if Travis would help him restore the car back to its original Lee 1 form. Travis was skeptical at first, but eventually he ended up doing it. Travis helped him restore it, and then he took the car back to Georgia to visit the original film locations and whatnot. But not too long after that, Lee 1 was up on stage at Barrett-Jackson, where it was sold to Bubba Watson for $121,000. Now, Bubba Watson isn't very well liked in the Dukes of Hazzard community because in 2015, Bubba threatened to vandalize the legendary car by painting an American flag over the Confederate flag on the roof. But it's unknown to us if he ever actually did it. John Schneider spoke out about it, and he believes that he didn't paint over the flag. And if he did, John asked him to paint over his signature as well. I don't think Bubba did it. If you paid $121,000 for a car that only has value because of its paint job, I don't think that you would actually paint over it. And if you did, you're kind of a moron. I mean, if you paid $121,000 for a Batmobile, would you really think about painting over the Batman logo on the side because bat poop supposedly started a worldwide pandemic? No, you wouldn't, because that's stupid. And in all honesty, is Lee 1 really the most important General Lee? I mean, to a certain extent, yes it is, because it's the first one. But there is actually one that people claim is more important than Lee 1. Lee 1 was only used in 2 episodes throughout the entire series of the Dukes of Hazzard. There is another General Lee out there that was used many different times throughout the series. It belongs to Chris and Bob Hartwig of Chrome Cars and Movie Machines. The General Lee that they own, they claim to be the most important surviving General Lee from the show. This specific screen-used General Lee is a bit different than Lee 1, as this car was never jumped. They used this car more so for burnouts and high-speed chases because it was a 440 RT Charger, and Warner Bros. Didn't like to jump those cars because of how much balanced weight they would have to put in the trunk to get it to land correctly. In 2005, Bob and Chris got a hold of this car and restored it to the way it looked on the show. If you'd like to find out more about the existing important General Lees, check out these 2 videos when you're done watching this one. Those 2 videos do a great job telling the story of Lee 1 and the Chrome Cars General Lee. I'll leave a link to both of them down in the description. The General Lee has a legacy in entertainment that will never be beat. It is amongst the most recognized cars in TV history, and there are thousands of replicas out there to prove it. People have made a General Lee out of every single vehicle in the books. I've seen them made out of smart cars, pickup trucks, semi-trucks, motorcycles, boats. Hell, I even attempted to make one out of my Grand Prix. That was the General Chunky, bro. A guy named James Smith started building replica General Lees out of Crown Vics.
We wanted something besides a Charger. We wanted to do a General Lee that looks like a General Lee but not be a 69 Charger, because 69 Chargers are way too valuable to be out thrashing around on them. I thought about it 5 years before we did Cooter's Last Stand. I'd already shot the video that I released on YouTube. I already had the footage shot in my boneyard to do it, and then the event that I was going to use it for fell through. So I waited when Alma called me and said, hey, we want you to do an event for us, but bring your own car. So that I then started putting the pieces together and built the car out of the Crown Vic, and then I knew it would work. You know, I've been telling everybody that I've got about 14,000 in parts, so the labor's pretty, I mean, it's a lot of work.
How much would you charge for one to be built?
You know, about 27,000.
And do you think they'd be able to be street legal?
They could. I've made some with turn signals and brake lights and tail lights and markers working.
But anyways, guys, that is it for this video. I hope I was able to learn you a thing or two about the General Lee. Be sure to go and check out some of my other Dukes of Hazzard related videos. I've got videos where they jump the General Lee in downtown Detroit. I've got a whole series of videos from Bo's Extravaganza in 2020, plus animated Dukes of Hazzard skits in Grand Theft Auto 5. I actually recreated the first scene of the first episode of the Dukes of Hazzard in GTA 5. Word for word, shot for shot, everything is identical. But with all that said and out of the way, I am ChunkyMonkey40 at YouTube.com. Stay rebel, y'all, and remember, orange cars matter. Peace, fucking!
Just some good old boys. Never mean